In the forests of Madagascar, and nowhere else on Earth, lives a group of intriguing animals whose name comes from a Latin word meaning ghostly spirits. These are the lemurs. There are over 20 different species of lemur in a great variety of shapes, sizes and colours, and although their faces generally give them this dog-like appearance, lemurs are in fact primates, related to monkeys, to apes and to ourselves. Their eyes face forward, just like ours, giving them the binocular vision so helpful when judging distances amongst the trees. The hands are also similar, with thumbs which move towards the fingers, ideal for gripping branches and reaching for food. With a particularly keen sense of smell, lemurs use their noses much more than other primates, but are similar in giving birth to a well-developed baby which is carried around like this for several months. All primates groom each other, not only to clean their fur, but also as a friendly act which helps maintain the bond between relatives. But as an example of the quite separate way lemurs have evolved, they use a special tooth comb instead of their hands. From a very young age, infants practice and develop the agility that will help them to move safely on their own among the trees. Some lemurs, particularly ringtails like these, spend part of the day on the ground. Their long tails, held high like beacons, might enable a troop to keep together as they travel the forest floor. Mothers carrying very young babies slung under their bellies often lead the way. In lemur society, females are dominant. After 3 or 4 weeks, the youngsters change to a jockey position. There's a better view from here. At least for those who climb on the right way round. If instead of ringtails these were vervet monkeys or baboons, the scene would be reminiscent of East Africa. But lemurs are not true monkeys and have evolved to this degree only on the tropical island of Madagascar. 1,000 miles long and about 300 miles wide, Madagascar is thought to have broken away from mainland Africa about 200 million years ago and drifted eastwards with a cargo of primitive animals and plants. Evolution continued for millions of years in isolation, so that the lemurs of today, together with most of the other animals and plants on the island, are found nowhere else but Madagascar. Here in the south, the occasional large river, fed by rain in the distant mountains, is virtually the only water in an otherwise arid country. Along each bank grows a fringe of lush riverine forest. Most of the large trees, like tamarind and acacias, are deciduous and provide edible flowers, fruits and leaves for the lemurs. Five species of lemur share this particular forest bordering the river. 2 are nocturnal, while the other 3 are active during the day more like the true monkeys. Ringtails are the most conspicuous lemurs here. They live in closely knit troops averaging 10 to 12 animals, but occasionally with over 20. Females form the central core of any troop and rarely desert to another. It's only the males that will sometimes move away. Members of each troop mark the boundaries of their home range with a distinctive smell. In this case, it's a female using the scent gland at the base of her tail. Another of the species active in the daytime has the common name shifak because of their characteristic alarm call. Like ringtails, each shifak troop relies heavily on scent marking to define its home range. This male applies scent to a branch with a special throat gland and then carefully checks the effect with his nose. Satisfied that one aroma has infused the bark, he smears a different scent from his tail gland over the same place. Like most lemurs, a ringtail mother will suckle her offspring for 3 to 4 months. But even when a few weeks old, infants spend more and more time exploring on their own or joining others in energetic play. Despite being naturally agile, poor judgment at this age sometimes leads to a serious fall. This youngster eventually died from its injuries. Occasionally, twins are born, which can indicate a particularly rich supply of food in the area. This pair is eating the mud from the termite mound, perhaps for the salts it contains. Ringtails spend many hours on or near the ground. It's cooler down here, especially during the middle part of the day. On the forest floor, they will eat herbs, flowers, and even cobwebs. But the staple diet is the pods of the tamarind tree, known locally as keeli. The keeli is broken open to get at the nourishing sticky fruit which surrounds each seed. Keeping possession of choice food, or being able to take pieces from other animals, often aggressively, is one of the ways lemurs affirm their status within the troop. Males and females each have separate orders of rank, but females are always dominant over males. This male has a keeli in his hand, which the approaching female decides she would like for herself. With very little resistance, the male gives up the chosen pod. The arrival of a red-fronted lemur might cause her more trouble. When red-fronted lemurs and ringtails share the same forest, aggressive confrontations, like this, are most likely at favourite feeding sites. After some resistance, the ringtail finally moves off, leaving the ground clear for the rest of the red-fronted troop to descend in search of food. Females have grey patches on their foreheads, whereas a male can be identified by his reddish top knot. Newborn infants are attractive to all members of their troop, and this one is getting attention from an adult male, something more likely with red-fronted lemurs than other species. These youngsters are always carried across the body instead of longwise like ringtails. Foraging amongst the leaf litter, red-fronted lemurs have a wider diet than the other species. Besides leaves, flowers and fruits, they will also eat fungi and various small creatures, including millipedes and spiders, when they can be found. The Madagascan giant kua often follows closely, catching insects that have been disturbed by the troop. Both red-fronted and ringtails need to drink regularly, either directly from the river if it's within their range, from the hollows of large trees where rainwater has collected, or by licking the dew off leaves. The verdant woodland where these lemurs live grows only in a narrow strip parallel to the river where the tree roots can reach the water table. Beyond, where the land rises much higher above the water level, there stretches a vast area of totally different vegetation. From a distance it appears quite similar. Only a closer look reveals the true nature of this unique and remarkable forest. Here are mighty baobabs, 7 species to mainland Africa's 1. And strange trees belonging to the Didieria family. Although they might look like cacti, they have proper woody trunks that can be cut into planks. Waxy, succulent leaves appear only after one of the infrequent rainfalls, so that for most of the year, the vicious thorns are the most noticeable feature. The majority of plants here have protective spines of one kind or another, so it's little wonder that the area is commonly called the spiny forest. In this region, it's extremely hot, dry and prickly. The sort of place where you might expect only reptiles and insects, like this cicada, to survive. It seems remarkable, then, to find sheepharks here, clinging nonchalantly to the thorny stems. How they avoid wounding their soft palms and feet when they leap between the spine-covered branches is a complete mystery. In this virtually waterless area, ringtail and red-fronted lemurs would find it very difficult to survive, whereas sheephark flourish here. The secret is that she fox don't drink water directly. They have the ability to extract all the moisture they require from their vegetarian diet. In this case, the leathery leaves of solanum, a relative of the tomato family. The spiny forest is one of the world's most unusual places, an area unique even by Madagascan standards. For here, an astonishing 95% of all the plants, and quite possibly many of the creatures, are found nowhere else. It's only after one of the rare rainstorms that flowers appear. And at these moments, Didiearias bloom so vigorously that every possible space seems crammed with blossoms. The flowers of an aloe attract a swallowtail butterfly. The sudden glut of nectar brings seasonal visitors like this pair of green sunbirds. While a flurry of monarch butterflies brightens the scene around a flowering milkweed vine. During most of the year, the spiny forest is seemingly uninviting, and yet the sheephark alarm calls give notice of other residents that have found ways of surviving here. This area is the traditional homeland of the Tandroi, the people of the thorns. Growing enough food in such an arid region is always difficult, particularly for those villagers who are farthest from the river. The food could be supplemented by lemur hunting, but the Tandroi are pastoralists and have strong religious fardis, or taboos, against killing certain wild animals, including lemurs. There is a problem, however, which does lead to conflict between humans and wildlife, the age-old one of intensive grazing. Throughout Madagascar, livestock is accumulated as a sign of wealth. Of course, the animals do provide milk and meat, but the domestic herds are kept mainly to pay for marriages and funerals, a bank balance on the hoof. Goats let loose in the forest are very destructive, browsing just about anything they can reach. Seedlings have little chance to mature, and where livestock movement is heavy, like this route to the river, the unfortunate result can clearly be seen. Problems such as overgrazing are always difficult to solve, particularly in areas that are poor. For the moment, the few remaining forests of these parched southern lands still provide a most precious resource, but they are under pressure and may survive only with the help of concerted protection. The river, which sustains cattle and people, also keeps alive the forest home of a great diversity of wildlife, of which only the primates have received much international attention. The natural reservoir, which is the source of this vital water, is a place permanently lush and humid. The distant rainforest of the eastern mountains, with unique animals of its own. Perhaps the true spirits of the rainforest are the largest of all Madagascar's primates, the Indris, who proclaim their family territories with an eerie song. Adult Indri are the size of a 3-year-old child, with a none too complimentary local name, Babakoto, meaning the stupid one, the ancestor who stayed in the trees. And Indri do indeed spend most of their time in the forest canopy eating leaves. Although, as with all lemurs, Indri have evolved in isolation from other primates, their lifestyle in some ways parallels that of the gibbons of Southeast Asia. Both gibbons and Indri live in small family groups with males and females pairing for life, and both communicate with other groups using loud songs. Instead of swinging with their arms as gibbons do, Indri use powerful thrusts of their long hind legs to leap through the trees. Typical of all tropical rainforests, the natural variety of plant and animal life on display here is abundant and often colourful. But again, much of it is exclusive to Madagascar. The eastern rainforest is also home to a diverse range of lemurs. These are diademed sheepharks, larger than the sheephark of the dry south, but not as big as the Indris. There is a number of smaller, less noticeable lemurs in the rainforest. This one is called the red-bellied lemur, while one of the most elusive has rarely been observed by Western scientists. They're called broad-nosed gentle lemurs and live almost exclusively on bamboo. It's the tender shoots which are preferred, but they will also tackle large stems with their sharp teeth in order to feed on the softer interior walls. Vast stretches of Madagascan rainforest have already been felled, so the areas that do remain have a greater importance than ever, not merely as living museums of rare wildlife, but as a vital source of water for the drier lands elsewhere. The downpours of rain are absorbed by the vegetation and soil like a giant sponge, and then gradually released to form the many tumbling streams. Concentrated eventually into wide sandy waterways, such as this one in the far south, the mountain rainwater gives life to the riverine forests and their inhabitants. It is April. The brief rainy season is almost over, and the ringtails warm themselves after a cool night. For ringtails, this is the mating season, which lasts for only 2 weeks each year. During this brief period, each female is receptive to mating for only a single day. And for males, their distinctively patterned tails take on a new purpose in rituals that lead to courtship and mating. Males have yet another scent gland on the inside of each wrist, the visible dark patch there, and again on another male. These glands, together with others near the armpits, exude a sticky substance with a powerful individual scent which, when smeared onto the tail, can be used for what is appropriately called a stink fight. With a shiver of the tail overhead, rival males waft their personal scent at each other. Stink fights and chases confirm the status of each male, usually without the need for physical combat. With a rival temporarily deterred, a dominant male also uses his scented tail to approach a desirable female. In this case, she seems uninterested. Perhaps she's not yet fully receptive. Whereas another female, ready for mating, advertises her interest and encourages male attention with contact calls. The sound, sight, and smell of a receptive female in the tree above results in a frenzy of scent marking by this male. Anything at hand is marked, as if to surround himself by his own scent and perhaps create a barrier to deter other males from following. As he approaches the receptive female, the horny spurs which project from his wrist glands are used alternately to gouge scent into the bark of a liana. Nearby, a rival takes up the challenge. All this excitement encourages some juvenile males to mimic their elders in play. In the adult world above, one of the males is now shadowing the receptive female. As she moves through the treetops, she leaves her own scent mark. The male follows her more and more closely until eventually she rests and adopts a mating position. But before mating can take place, an unwelcome visitor interrupts. It's the rival male approaching from below. With the intruder seen off, the consorting male makes another ritual approach, this time without interruption. The rival male is frustrated, having spent most of the day trying unsuccessfully to claim the female for himself. Giving up altogether, he leaves the courting pair, who will stay together now and mate many more times before sunset. At the end of the day, when the two of them finally part company, the exhausted male grooms himself thoroughly in the twilight. Once the forest is dark, the nocturnal lemurs emerge from their daytime hiding places. This one is a leopy lemur. The size of a rabbit, leopy lemurs occur in 7 distinct races throughout Madagascar. They're one of the smallest primates with a solely vegetarian diet. And unlike the diurnal lemurs, leopy lemurs are solitary, communicating most notably with loud screeching calls. Another nocturnal lemur found in these forests is the smallest living primate in the world, the lesser mouse lemur, weighing on average a mere 60 grams, little more than a hen's egg. They exist on a high-energy diet of insects and ripe fruit, and bear twin young, which, unlike other lemurs, are born blind and sheltered in a nest. Foraging amongst the leaf litter below is an animal that looks remarkably similar to a European hedgehog. In fact, it's no relation, but one of a family of insectivores, the tenrecs, again native only to Madagascar. By dawn, it will retire to the safety of a burrow. The local belief that lemurs are worshippers of the sun is particularly relevant to ringtails and sheepharks, who sit with their arms outspread, chest facing the warming rays. Although early morning is one of the most active feeding periods for the ringtail lemurs, they'll often stop to rest in a patch of sunlight, warming themselves in their own effective way. The lemurs are not hunted by humans in this forest, so apart from dogs on the ground, the major threat might come from overhead. Some local birds of prey are capable of catching young lemurs. Certainly, if the ringtails spot a buzzard nearby, their concern can be considerable. And alarm spreads through the forest. When she-fox are on the move, their supreme agility and precision in the trees can clearly be seen, particularly in slow motion. She-fox are vertical leapers, relying on powerful rear legs to push off with and large feet to clamp onto the branches. Front limbs are used for steadying and balance. When a gap between trees is too wide to cross in mid-air, she-fox often climb down and continue along the ground in a way which presents one of the most extraordinary sights of the Madagascan forest. Disproportionately long legs, evolved for movement in the trees, makes running on all fours impossible. For she-fox, bouncing sideways seems the only alternative. But for a youngster, the method has first to be learned and then perfected. An adult's movement is like a gymnastic ballet. While the youngster looks more like a child in a sack race. As with all young primates, she-fox juveniles spend many hours of the day playing. Feeding and playing on the ground is common for many she-fox troops, but only when the forest floor is clear of predators or human disturbance. And even then, they're constantly vigilant. The forest can become stiflingly hot when the sun is at its highest, and she-fox habitually seek the coolest spots for a midday siesta. In a nearby Tandroy village, while a meal is being cooked ready for the evening, many of the people are also at rest. There is a weaver bird colony in a tree close to the chief's hut. This is considered to be a sign of particular good fortune for the village. But more than good fortune is needed in Madagascar. There is often a shortage of the most basic supplies, like fuel for cooking and warmth. More food is needed to sustain a growing population, and more timber for constructing houses or for converting into charcoal. All these requirements might be met by an improved use of resources, but at present there is immense pressure on the remaining forests. When rainforest is felled in water catchment areas, the steady supply to the rivers is reduced. When spiny forest is cleared, the underlying soil is not very fertile and soon turns into a baking desert of little use to people, cattle, or wild animals. Of the deciduous forest that used to fringe the banks of the great southern rivers, little remains. Local people are often aware of how forest degradation and clearance affects the future for themselves and for lemurs. But locked into a struggle against poverty, there is usually little they can do to stop it. International funds are required urgently for development and conservation. And more local pride and national awareness is vital in the crucial battle to save the forests for people and animals alike. Unless we care enough about the problems facing the Madagascan people and their wildlife, it's possible that within a lifetime, the lemurs, instead of being the living spirits of the forest, will remain only as ghostly shadows in textbooks and films.